Cops break into laughter after arresting a black defendant who barely says a word until the room goes dead silent with a single sentence. What happens when the badge doesn't belong to them? Let us know in the comments section below. Mae Norwood didn't flinch when the cold metal clicked around her wrists. She stood still, posture relaxed, eyes locked on a distant point beyond the shoulder of Deputy Ray Dobbin. Her calm irritated him. Ray had spent enough time around people who were supposed to grovel, to beg, to ask for mercy when they were caught doing something wrong, especially folks like her. But Mae didn't do any of that. She just looked at him, like she could see right through him. "You got ID or not?" Ray barked, lifting her by the elbow just a little harder than necessary. Mae blinked, then said quietly, "It's in the glove compartment." "You never asked before you cuffed me." Sheriff Alan Knox leaned into the open car window, his heavy-set frame pressing against the door as he popped open the glove box. "Well, well, we got ourselves a mouthy one, don't we?" he drawled, loud enough for the gas station attendant nearby to chuckle. Ray smirked and turned back to Mae. "Figures. Driving out-of-state plates in a county like ours without so much as a registration and license are valid," Knox interrupted, flipping through the contents. "Address is Washington, D.C. Ray paused. "D.C.? Mae looked at him then. Actually looked. "Yeah. That a problem?" Her tone didn't match her expression. Her voice was calm, even warm, like she was asking if they had sweet tea on the menu, but her eyes were sharp, alert, and Sheriff Knox didn't like it. "Step back, Ray," Knox said, standing up straighter. "Let's just get her in and processed. Ain't our first out-of-towner thinking they can speed through Miller County." She had been going 35 and a 30, or so they claimed. They hadn't even run her plates before the lights went on. But none of that mattered now. Inside the Miller County station, Mae said nothing while they processed her. The fingerprint machine beeped. The camera clicked. A white female officer handed her an orange jumpsuit. She changed in silence, folding her clothes neatly, placing them on the bench as if she were checking into a hotel. "You'll be arraigned in the morning," Officer Leanne muttered, avoiding her eyes. "No phones until then." Mae nodded, understood. Then she sat on the bench inside the holding cell, closed her eyes, and didn't move for the rest of the night. The courtroom was stuffy and old, like most things in Miller County. The flags were faded, the wood panels worn down by decades of elbows and judgment. Judge Carr had been on the bench for 17 years and could count on one hand the number of black defendants who didn't come in with public defenders and guilty pleas. Mae Norwood wasn't on that hand. Not yet. Sheriff Knox leaned against the wall near the back of the room, arms crossed. Ray sat beside him, snickering under his breath. "He didn't even ask for a lawyer," Ray whispered. "Probably thinks the whole thing'll blow over. Typical." Knox chuckled. "They always think they know the law. Till they don't." In the front row, a woman in a tan blazer took notes. Camille Ward, reporter for the Miller Daily Chronicle. She wasn't usually interested in petty charges like failure to comply and resisting arrest, but something about Mae's demeanor had made her linger longer than expected. The bailiff called Mae's name. She stepped forward slowly, her hands no longer cuffed, chin high, gaze steady. Judge Carr barely looked up. "State your name for the record." "Mae Norwood. Charges are misdemeanor traffic violation, failure to comply, and obstructing a law enforcement officer. How do you plead?" Mae's eyes moved across the courtroom like a scan. Camille scribbled. Ray smirked. Knox licked his thumb and turned a page in the arrest report. "Before I enter a plea," Mae said, her voice clear and firm, "I'd like to formally identify myself." Ray leaned back, arms crossed. "Oh, here we go." Judge Carr raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." Mae reached into the pocket of her slacks, retrieved from the property room at her request, and pulled out a small leather case. She flipped it open and held it up with 2 fingers. Special Agent Mae Norwood, FBI, Internal Affairs Division. The silence that followed was immediate. It wasn't just quiet. It was absence. Like the courtroom had been vacuum-sealed and someone punched a hole in the air. Ray sat forward, face pale. Knox stopped flipping his page. Judge Carr looked up for the first time. "Would you repeat that?" Mae stepped forward and laid her badge on the table in front of the judge. "I was on assignment when I was stopped. I did not identify myself because I was gathering evidence of a pattern of unconstitutional stops and detainments in your jurisdiction. My team will be arriving shortly." The gavel didn't fall. The laughter didn't return. And for the first time in a long while, Miller County's courtroom felt like a place where the law didn't just live on paper. It had walked in through the front doors, quietly, patiently, dressed like a defendant. Her name was Mae Norwood. Nobody moved at first. Not the judge, not the bailiff, not even the two cops who had booked her like she was nobody. Time didn't stop. It stalled. Right there on the courtroom floor, trying to figure out if what it just heard could possibly be true. Mae stood still, her ID case still open, the gold badge catching the dust-mottled morning light like a blade freshly drawn. Camille Ward's pen slipped. Literally. It dropped from her fingers and clattered onto the floor, the only sound besides the quiet whine of the fluorescent lights overhead. Her eyes widened behind her glasses as she stared at Mae, not like a defendant anymore, but like a mystery that had just grown legs and started walking. "Internal Affairs?" Judge Carr's voice dropped an octave. She looked at the badge again, then back to Mae's face. "This some kind of stunt?" "No, Your Honor," Mae said, her tone calm but with an unmistakable edge now. "My presence in this jurisdiction was part of an ongoing investigation into departmental misconduct, specifically surrounding traffic stops and racial profiling. As of this morning, that investigation is no longer covert." She turned her head just slightly, and her eyes locked with Sheriff Knox's. He didn't blink. Ray did. "Jesus," Ray whispered, stepping back, one hand rising toward his chest as though to physically shield himself from whatever fallout was about to come down. Knox didn't say a word, not yet. His eyes narrowed, calculating, always calculating. You don't make it to sheriff in Miller County without knowing when to speak and when to shut your mouth. "Let me be very clear," Mae continued, voice still even. "Last night, 2 officers performed an unlawful stop, no probable cause, no license check before escalation. I was forcibly detained without being asked a single identifying question. My civil rights were violated, and I've documented the entire process. What happened last night wasn't a one-off. And I'm not the first." The room began to shift. People sat straighter. The court reporter stopped transcribing mid-word. Camille's fingers hovered over her pen again, then snatched it up like it was the last match in a blackout. Judge Carr exhaled, the kind of breath you take when you realize the courtroom you've presided over for nearly 2 decades has just turned into a national headline. "Mrs. Norwood," she said carefully, "do you have evidence to support these claims?" Mae reached into the slim black folder she had retrieved from the property clerk earlier. She pulled out a flash drive, held it up, and offered it to the bailiff. "Body cam footage pulled from your own department's cloud, screen captured as part of an internal security sweep. There's also dash cam footage, although that feed was disconnected partway through the interaction. Conveniently." Knox finally moved, just a step forward. "You accessed our internal server." "I didn't," Mae said. "Your systems administrator did. You can check the login logs. They'll be in your IT department's morning audit, if you make it that far." Ray opened his mouth, then closed it. His jaw twitched. "Your Honor," Mae said, turning back to Judge Carr, "I'm requesting immediate release, suppression of the charges, and that this court issue a motion to preserve all evidence related to my detainment, including communication logs, body and dash cam data, officer disciplinary records, and incident reports tied to traffic stops over the past 12 months. Carr sat back in her chair. You came prepared. I came hoping I wouldn't need to be. The judge rubbed at her temple, her gavel unused. Motion to preserve granted. Charges are hereby dropped. You're free to go, Agent Norwood. Camille let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. But Mae didn't move. I'm not leaving, she said. Not yet. And just like that, the room fell silent again. I'd like to speak to the sheriff. Now. On record. Knox raised his head a fraction, then walked forward like someone approaching a poker table, not a courtroom. His boots echoed on the floor as he stopped just short of her personal space. Got a lot of nerve, he muttered. No, Sheriff. I have a lot of evidence. Mae replied, her voice lower now. Your department has a pattern, not just of misconduct, but of intimidation. There are dashcam gaps in 6 different arrests. All of them happened within 10 miles of that gas station. All of them involved black drivers, and 5 of those drivers had charges mysteriously dropped after time served. You're making a lot of noise, Knox said, quieter still. This is a small town. Mae smiled, but it wasn't warm. And I've got a very big platform. Ray shifted again in the background, but his feet were nailed to the floor. You didn't see me coming. And that's your mistake. You saw a woman in an old car with dark skin and thought it made you safe. You laughed. But you never asked who I was, and now you'll answer for it. Knox's lips curled, but not in a smile. He turned to Judge Carr. This is federal overreach. No, it's federal accountability, Mae said before the judge could respond. And don't worry, this doesn't end in this courtroom. I'll be seeing you again, Sheriff. But next time, it'll be with subpoenas, not questions. Judge Carr stood. This hearing is adjourned. I suggest everyone here contacts their legal representation. Now, Mae finally stepped away, collected her badge, and walked toward the courtroom doors. Not in a hurry. Not angry. Just ready. Because this wasn't the end. This was the first knock on a door that had stayed closed for far too long. Camille Ward didn't sleep that night. The newsroom's ceiling fan clicked softly above her, but the silence was restless. Her desk lamp cast a warm circle of light around the flash drive Mae Norwood had handed her off the record just before disappearing into the rain-soaked parking lot after court. Camille had watched her walk out, a storm of dignity cloaked in civilian clothes and government muscle. She hadn't said anything, not to the judge, not to the press, not to Knox. But to Camille, she had said this. Don't just write about what they did to me. Write about what they've been doing to everyone. Now Camille sat at her desk with 2 tabs open on her laptop. One was the Miller County Arrest Database, the other a blank document titled Pattern, a story this town tried to bury. The footage started slow. A traffic stop from 3 months ago. A black teenager pulled over 2 blocks from the high school. The reason? Suspicious driving. No weapon, no aggression. But 3 officers showed up. One placed a knee on the boy's back as he cried for his mother. Camille skipped to another file. A middle-aged black woman, broken tail light. Her 2 kids were in the back seat when she was yanked out by her hair. No charges filed, no follow-up. Her name wasn't even in the local papers. The pattern wasn't subtle. It was practiced. Sheriff Knox sat in his office with the blinds shut tight, the air thick with silence and tension. Ray stood by the filing cabinet, arms folded, chewing his inner cheek until he tasted blood. This is bad, Ray muttered. This is real bad. Knox didn't answer. She's not bluffing, Elle. Knox turned his chair slowly to face him. I know that. So what's the move? The move, Knox said, rising to his feet with heavy precision, is to clean house before she burns it down. Ray's eyes widened. You mean what? Start shredding? No, Knox snapped. You shred, and it screams guilt. You delay, you reroute, you confuse the signal. Ray didn't respond. He looked down, unsure whether to trust the calm in Knox's voice. Knox stepped closer. We've weathered worse. Hell, I've had internal affairs knocked before. They knock, they look around, and they leave. She is internal affairs. Knox smiled without humor. And she's one person. You want to see real power? It's the people in this town who voted me in for 20 years, who don't want to see the name of Miller County smeared across national headlines. That's who we lean on now. Ray swallowed hard. Knox walked to the window, cracked the blinds with 2 fingers, and looked out. Start calling everyone who's got something to lose. Tell them if they've got favors, now's the time to cash in. Mae sat in a diner just outside city limits, a steaming mug of black coffee in front of her, and a manila folder open to a spreadsheet of names, badge numbers, and timestamps. Across from her sat Malcolm Reyes, Special Agent, Internal Affairs Bureau Liaison, and more importantly, the only person she trusted enough to call last night. "You've stirred up a nest," he said, tapping his pen against the table. "They're not a nest," Mae replied, eyes scanning the spreadsheet. "They're a system." Malcolm leaned back. "You really think it goes beyond Knox?" Mae pointed to 3 incidents, all involving minor infractions, all escalating into excessive force. These aren't just a few bad apples. They're operating with a common playbook. And the cover-up isn't lazy, it's engineered. Malcolm nodded slowly. "The Bureau's watching, but they want something bigger than rude cops. You know how this works." "Not here to make headlines," Mae said, her voice calm but steel-lined. "I'm here to make a case that sticks. And if it doesn't?" She met his eyes. "Then I make sure they never feel comfortable doing it again." Malcolm sighed, then pushed a USB across the table. "You didn't get this from me. It's encrypted body cam logs. Some were pulled after reports were mysteriously edited. The originals tell a different story." Mae took it, slid it into her coat pocket. "You still good to fly in the tech team?" "To tomorrow morning. Then we've got time." "Do what?" Mae stood. "To meet the people they thought no one would ever believe." By noon, Mae was knocking on a faded green door in the east side of Miller. An elderly woman opened it, her eyes cautious until they met Mae's. "You don't look like the cops." "I'm not," Mae said. "But I'm here about the night your grandson was arrested." The woman stared at her for a long beat, then opened the door wider. Inside, photos lined the walls, smiling faces, family reunions, birthdays. At the center of the room, a framed picture of a boy in a cap and gown. The same boy Mae had seen thrown onto the hood of a cruiser in one of the videos Camille had sent her. "I told them he wasn't dangerous," the woman said, lowering herself into a worn armchair. "I told him he just wanted to get home." Mae sat across from her. "I believe you." The woman's voice cracked. "Nobody ever came to ask what happened. Not one. Until now." Mae took out a notepad. "I'm here now." Outside the house, a black SUV idled. Inside it, Ray watched from behind the tinted glass, lips thin, jaw set. "Should we move?" asked the driver, a younger officer named Porter. Ray shook his head. "Not yet." He watched Mae step outside, notebook in hand, smile fading the second her eyes met his windshield. She didn't flinch. It didn't stop. She just walked down the steps, turned the corner, and vanished from view like smoke. Ray gripped the door handle, but didn't open it. He knew then this wasn't a cleanup job anymore. This was a reckoning, and it had already begun. Mae Norwood stood at the edge of the community center stage, a single microphone in front of her and folding chairs filled with neighbors, reporters, and faces she'd only seen in police reports. She wasn't wearing her badge today, just a plain black blazer over a dark red blouse. No weapons, no armor, just truth. Behind her, a projector cast silent footage, grainy black and white dash cams, and glitchy body cam clips. In each clip, the same pattern. A black driver, a minor infraction, an unnecessary escalation. No sound. The images spoke louder than any commentary could. She turned to face the room. For years, she said, her voice carrying across the hall, these recordings sat buried under procedural excuses and redacted reports. What you're seeing isn't new, it's just finally being seen. A quiet hum of murmurs rolled through the audience. The mayor sat in the back, arms folded so tight his knuckles were white. Beside him, Judge Carr watched in silence. Camille Ward typed notes with controlled urgency. She knew this was history, not just news. Mae continued. I was pulled over for driving 5 miles over the limit. What followed wasn't just unlawful, it was routine. That's what makes it dangerous. Because what happened to me was nothing new for this county. The only difference was, I had a badge in my pocket. She paused. A badge that gave me the power to fight back. A woman in the front row, the grandmother Mae had visited 2 days earlier, nodded slowly, eyes wet. Mae went on. Thanks to the Bureau's full cooperation and the Department of Justice's emergency audit, Sheriff Knox and Deputy Ray Dobbins have both been relieved of duty. As of this morning, federal indictments have been issued against multiple current and former officers involved in falsified traffic reports, illegal detainments, and evidence tampering. These aren't just firings, these are prosecutions. A few gasps rose from the crowd, followed by a growing wave of applause. Malcolm stood near the edge of the room, arms crossed, head tilted toward the projector as the next clip began to play. A young black man pulled over at dusk. 2 officers, no search warrant, no reason, just fear. Then the camera flickered out. Mae turned back to the crowd. We can't erase what's happened, but we can prevent it from happening again. She gestured toward the side of the stage, where a young man walked up, nervously straightening his tie. It was Elijah, her nephew, carrying a stack of petitions under his arm. This is Elijah, Mae said. He's 16. He just wrote his first civic policy proposal for a civilian oversight board to monitor traffic stops in Miller County. The crowd clapped again, louder this time. Elijah looked out at the room, cheeks flushed. We're already halfway to the signatures we need. Mae gave him a nod. He stepped down, beaming. Afterward, people gathered in the lobby. Some stood in line to shake Mae's hand. Others swapped stories of what they'd seen, what had happened to them, what they'd kept silent about for too long. Camille approached Mae with her notebook clutched tightly. It's going national, she said. This story? It's already picked up by 3 networks. I'm not doing this for headlines, Mae said softly. I know, Camille replied, but now everyone else knows too. Outside, a cool wind stirred the trees. Mae stepped into the sunlight, the tension in her shoulders finally softening. She looked down at her phone, reading the text Malcolm had sent her just before the meeting started. Final audit submitted. DOJ confirms patterns. Press conference in D.C. next week. You'll be leading it. She pocketed the phone. On the street corner across from the center, 2 boys were skateboarding. One of them fell, scraping his knee. The other helped him up. A woman with her daughter walked past and smiled at Mae. Nothing extraordinary. Just a quiet, peaceful day. That, she thought, is what justice should make possible. The next morning, Sheriff Knox's house was empty. His cruiser sat in the driveway, doors unlocked, keys gone. No one had seen him since the indictments dropped. Ray had turned himself in. Word was he broke down before he even reached the courtroom. Mae didn't celebrate that. She didn't enjoy ruin. But accountability wasn't vengeance. It was restoration. The trust that had been broken in Miller County wasn't fixed overnight. But the healing had started. It was in the school boards, now holding joint town halls. It was in the churches offering Know Your Rights workshops. It was in the young people handing out flyers for the new Community Justice Initiative. Mae met Malcolm at the airport later that week. "You packed?" he asked as they walked toward security. "Always," she replied. "You ready for D.C.?" He gave her a sideways smile. "Not the question I'd ask you." "Then what? You ready to be the face of something this big?" She paused. "No," she said. "But I'm ready to make sure this isn't just a moment. It's a beginning." He nodded. It boarded the flight. As the plane lifted from the runway, Mae looked out the window one last time at the town below. Small, familiar, flawed. But maybe, just maybe, finally free to become something better.